A lot of people think that baking is exacting, and I challenge that it's not really. A good home cook or baker, like a grandmother, made pies by hand. Did they measure? No. They did it by feel, touch.
Those are the wise words of encouragement of Chef Jim Dodge, who is a very famous pastry chef. He has taught some of your favorite chefs from around the world, too. You will enjoy this kitchen chat today, where Chef Jim Dodge will give us some fun stories about Julia Child, as well as some fantastic tips for the home baker.
Come on in to Margaret McSweeney's Kitchen for Kitchen Chat, where every week you'll meet chefs, cookbook authors, foodies, gourmets, and just plain people who love to eat. And along with laughter, chat, recipes, and stories about food, you'll sometimes also hear words of inspiration, love, and hope. As Margaret always says, Kitchen Chat is food for the senses and food for the soul. So grab a cup of coffee, put your feet up on a comfy chair, and get ready to spend a little time with Margaret and her friends.
Hello, dear foodie friends, and welcome to Kitchen Chat. I'm your host, Margaret McSweeney, and I'm so excited you're joining me in Santa Fe, New Mexico, out on a beautiful plaza here at the International Association of Culinary Professionals. And what an honor it is to be sitting outside at a table with Jim Dodge, who has been such a incredible culinarian and educator and has been in the business for quite a while, and is going to share some of his insight, his baking tips, as well as how things have changed within the industry. So welcome to Kitchen Chat, Jim.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Oh, and it's so peaceful. Listeners, you'll hear the birds in the background. It has just been such a fun conference. What is your favorite thing about Santa Fe so far?
Well, definitely the food and the architecture second. I just love this architecture.
Yes, and we're here at International Association of Culinary Professionals, and as many of my foodie friends know, IACP changed my life when I joined about 6 years ago, just opened the door to Kitchen Chat and having these fun podcasts on this incredible culinary journey. Jim, how long have you been a member of IACP?
Shortly after it founded, so I think that was 78. Yeah, so about that time.
Yeah. So you have seen some changes in the industry.
Tremendous changes, yes, absolutely. Yes.
So tell us, how did your culinary journey begin?
Well, I was very fortunate because I grew up in the mountains of and lakes region of New Hampshire, which is a four-season resort with incredible beauty. And my family owned a very exclusive small resort, which had a wonderful clientele, very, very diverse, people from all over the world, and but the food was very important. People would frequently stay for weeks or a month, and might have 3 meals a day there, and the menu changed every day, so that there weren't big menus, but very interesting. And my father was extremely knowledgeable about food, and I'm the 7th generation to be in the hotel innkeeper business in New England. So it was our tradition in our family that you were trained to be in that business, and we all started our apprenticeship when we were 10. And the first job that my twin brother and I did was to weed the flower gardens. And there were a lot of flower gardens. And everything was organic at that time, and so I still remember it wasn't just you had to push your hand deep into the soil and grab the root, the whole root, pull it out, and slap it against the stone to make sure all the dirt was off, and we sort of liked that part. And then eventually we got to work in the kitchen, which was a lot of fun. We loved washing dishes with a hose sprayer, and occasionally spray each other. And then we started working in the bakery with the pastry chef, who was like a grandmother to us. And And I remember going there in the winter particularly. It was down below the main kitchen, and the warmth of that baking oven in a cold, snowy New Hampshire, it just sort of encircled you, and the comfort of it. And that, again, Lillian Drake, our pastry chef, she was like a grandmother to us. So the memories of that, I think, instilled something very special.
So what is your favorite taste memory from childhood?
Gee, that's the first thing I remember, because I'm talking about Lillian Drake. She was mainlining us cookies, and she'd start giggling because she'd say, "Oh, I can't give you any more. Your dad's going to get upset." But I would say the fruit cobblers and pies and stuff, because what's unique about New Hampshire, it's such a tough growing season, and it's one season so short, and some years you might not have great free fruit or things like that. I think strawberry shortcake made with field strawberries, which was the first fruit of the season, in the hayfields, before the grass got too high, were the tiny little field strawberries, and you had to pick them on the stem because they were so lush with juice. If you grabbed the fruit itself, it would just crush, and the flavor was just amazing. And they were only available 2 weeks, and then you had to wait a year.
Wow. So have you, through your culinary journey, incorporated any of those taste memories and ingredients from New Hampshire into your own dishes?
Yes. And, I was very fortunate, because when I was in my early 20s, I was able to do a 2-year Swiss apprenticeship. And I realized that Switzerland is very similar to New Hampshire. Great, at that time particularly, great dairy, and Jersey cows, brown cows, the best for milk and cream and stuff like that. And then they had the seasonal fruit. So I sort of after the apprenticeship, I sort of merged the two and used those fine European standards in pastry, incorporated those wonderful textures with things like a great banana cream pie. And so I sort of reinvented it. And I went through this process of assessing what makes it great. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, using really good cream that's not ultra-pasteurized, no additives, because it has more flavor and it has more texture. And those additives are bitter. And that's why people add sugar and vanilla to whipped cream, because they're masking those tastes. If you just whip regular cream, you don't have to add any sugar. It has a natural sweetness. It's full of flavor. So that's the topping. The bananas I used, I didn't cut them thin. I cut them thicker, because you associate, when you're eating pastry particularly, texture with fruit. That's part of the taste experience as well. So I went a little, and there's something wonderful about bananas when they're that texture. They're so smooth, and so I had, instead of using 2 bananas or 1, I used 5, and I didn't use any imitation flavor or anything like that. And I used a good creme pâtissière, which is a good pastry cream, or vanilla pudding. Mm-hmm. With a little butter at the end folded in, and fresh eggs and good milk and stuff like that. So you had a lot of flavor and just enough vanilla to enhance the banana taste. And then a crust, the most important, where a lot of people fail, that crust has to be baked golden brown, and you want it with butter because it has the most taste, and so it's nutty, and you have that crisp texture. So the fork goes through first the cream, which is luscious, then the banana, the texture, and then chops through the crust. It's crisp, and you need the contrast of all those different textures, and particularly the crust. And the crust has when it's golden brown, it's nutty, it's full of flavor. If it's underbaked, it's flat. It distracts. It has an odd taste because it's raw flour and it's gummy. So it distracts from everything else. So that balance, and a little less sugar is always better. So all the good ingredients, the cream, the dairy, and the fruit comes forward.
But how do you have that perfect golden crust? I'm a bit challenged on the baking side. What is the secret to the success for that?
First of all, to have a good recipe that has enough fat in it so that it rolls easily. And usually, my two favorite fats for that are butter, and then in the winter I will use really good lard or something like that. I'm not opposed to shortening because it's just neutral in taste, but the trick is to don't overhandle the dough once you make it. So good recipe, good formulas, easy to roll. If you can use a lot of flour, brush it off. Get a good, and when you're done, work quickly when you're rolling it out. And then when you line the pan, then you need to let it rest. And then you, for pre-baked crust, what I do is 2 metal pans that are about the same. And I line the pan, I refrigerate it with the dough. I take it out after preheating my oven, so about 20 minutes. Put an identical pan on top and turn it upside down. Put that on a sheet pan and bake it. And you're better off baking at a lower temperature because it bakes. Most people will bake it. They probably bake that at 375. It's too high, and a lower temperature. I like to bake at 325. It's slower. It bakes more evenly. Less likelihood for it to burn. Number one, and everything becomes equally browned. So then what you do is you turn it, and it colors first, cooks on the outside first, and then so you'll see that. And then what you do is you turn it upside down, you take it out of the oven, and you see if you can lift the second pan off. If it doesn't come off, that means it's not done baking. Leave it. Don't force it. Put it back in, bake another 5 minutes. Once it comes off, then you put it back in, right side up, just the one layer with the crust, and you finish baking it another 5 minutes or something like that. And it will be evenly golden brown. So lower temperature is the trick.
This is great advice out there for you bakers. And I'd love to hear, too, Jim, what were the milestones in your culinary career so far?
Well, I think, first of all, having that family training, working in every department of that hotel. My father bought from local growers. The hippies were growing organic vegetables, and they grew things for him. And then the Swiss apprenticeship, definitely. It was, and then when I moved back, it was sort of tough to get a job because pastry was a dying art. But moving to San Francisco in 1978, when I was 24, getting the job, the executive pastry chef at the Stanford Court, was pinnacle. That was an amazing opportunity. California's unique because of the growing season, the range, what's available, and particularly San Francisco. There's good dairy there. And because of the ethnic diversity, there's a wide range of things that are grown. And I had never seen really fresh figs, and they were available. The only thing we can't get is tart cherries, but so that, and then I had the opportunity to buy good ingredients and to explore and learn. And then the second thing, I think, teaching, because I was very withdrawn. I'd start work at 4 a.m. Pastry chefs that tend to be quiet. And that brought me out of my shell. And it made me realize what people needed to know by having those novices. So I became a better chef and a better manager. And that started actually my commitment to teaching, which is now over 40 years. and then the next, starting to get awards and write for newspapers and writing my first book. That was an experience. I had tremendous support from different friends, other chefs and restaurateurs and food writers.
And I remember running into you at the very first Julia Child Foundation Awards, where Jacques Pepin was being honored. And can you share with us, you seem to have a friendship with Chef Jacques Pepin and some other wonderful change makers within the culinary.
Yes, that's true, because, the thing about the Stanford Court during that period of the 70s and the 80s, until it was sold in 88 and became a part of a chain, it was if you were a food person, you stayed at the Stanford Court. And so people like Jacques would come, and he'd come down in the morning, and he'd have breakfast with us at the chef's table there, and then we'd talk and share little tips and things like that. And when Julia and Paul came for the first time, that was really memorable. And we have a long connection because my family bought one of their resorts from the same woman that Paul and Julia bought their house in Cambridge from. And so when they came, the first thing that impressed me is it took them 45 minutes to get through the kitchen to the pastry kitchen. I'm like, what's going on here? They stopped and asked every person, what did you do? What are you doing? Why do you do that? The genuine concern for everyone, the generosity of time was overwhelming. And that started a long friendship as well as with Jacques. And so I've been very fortunate to be involved with the Julia Child Foundation, and then as the jury chair for the awards, and then helping Jacques with his foundation that he's just established. And those are such great mentors. I mean, that's another pinnacle of my life, to see success like that, and they never changed, and they know the importance of giving back.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So do you have any favorite Julia Child memories? I never had the blessing of being able to meet her, and I love hearing from those who knew her share some special stories and insights.
Well, when she was in later in her life, and when I was working for Bon Appetit Management, and I was running the Getty Center food and beverage operation, I'd go up and visit her in Casa Madrona in Santa Barbara, and she had a condo, but the kitchen was really more of a pantry. It was really to warm things up and make breakfast and stuff. Like, she couldn't entertain, so she'd take her friends out to dinner, and we were at a local steakhouse, and she was cutting the steak, and it was very tough. It was just perhaps the animal, it was stressed when it was slaughtered, or and so I said to her, would you like me to have that, send that back? She paused and put her hand on my arm. She said, "Oh no, Jim, that would upset the chef too much." And I thought, my God, what consideration. She knew the power of the effect of that, and she did not want a negative situation. And then she just asked for a doggy bag. She didn't have a dog, but she didn't want them to be concerned that she had not finished it. And that kind of consideration, the deep consideration, is just, reiterated what I was taught. And probably the funniest story was, I would pick her up, and we'd go for lunch, and she'd decide we were going to go, and so I get her in my red truck, which she loved. It had running boards. It was up high. She's so curious she could see everything, and I think she loved that it was red too. And so I said, "Where are we going for lunch?" She said, "Costco." I paused and I said, "Costco?" All I could think is, what are we going to go and sample eat the samples? I said, "What are we going to eat at Costco?" And she kind of sighed and said, "Jim, don't you know they have the best hot dogs?" I said, "No, I didn't know that." So we went to Costco and had hot dogs and Cokes. No Diet Cokes, but Cokes. And then people would walk by and they'd look and they'd say, hey, I think that's Julia. And they go, oh, no, it couldn't be. Julia wouldn't be eating hot dogs at Costco. It was very funny. Very, very funny.
What a special memory. Oh, my goodness. And with IACP, because we're celebrating its 41st year, has IACP helped you navigate through the culinary world? And has it helped open doors for you during this time?
Without question. I mean, it's really contributed to the success of my career. I mean, meeting publishers, editors, and agents, and other cookbook authors, other chefs, other restaurateurs. The networking is phenomenal. And one of the reasons I come back, I attend every year, is to see people and friends that I don't get to see regularly, and from around the world. You know, I ran into a friend from Panama the other day, and I hadn't seen her in maybe 6 years. So it's a great organization, and you know, for me, they're great programming. But the programming is, a lot of the programming is based on people starting out, as it should be,
Yes.
as it should be. So, but there's still some great sessions I'm going to attend, that's for sure.
Well, great. Well, anything next professionally for you? What's going on in your kitchen?
Well, you know, I still teach when I can at Boston University. I just celebrated 30 years there. And then King Arthur Flour in Vermont, and upstate in Washington State, and then the Artisan Baking Center in Petaluma, which just opened, I think, 6 months ago. So I still have my hand in that. And then I try to educate people about what makes a good dessert. It's and then my own work within Bon Appetit Management Company, which is a wonderful restaurant management company, you know, stimulating our chefs by providing culinary education, because we're different than our competitors, where we don't have standard restaurant menus in our restaurants. Every cafe, is treated like independent restaurants. The chefs create menus for their market, and so, but we need to stimulate them. So I come up with, like, we recently did a Persian training. And just, you know, it's stimulating for them and expands their knowledge and their palates.
Wow. Well, I always like to end the show with 3 top tips for the home chef. So I guess in this case, for the home baker, what are 3 tips that have really helped you through the years?
Well, you know, a lot of people think that baking is exacting, and I challenge that it's not really. A good home cook or baker, like a grandmother or mother, you know, made pies by hand. Did they measure? No, they did it by feel, touch, and so pay attention to that. Teach yourself, when you make successful dough, feel it. Don't overhandle the dough. I think the same thing with cakes. If you're making a sponge cake, again, bake it at a lower temperature, at like 325. The cake will rise more evenly. It won't dome. So when you cut it in half, you don't have to cut off that top layer and discard it or whatever, and you'll get a more moist cake. And to test a cake, you touch the center when it's almost done, a sponge cake, and when it just springs back, and you can hear it. It sounds like a damp sponge. You know, it goes like that. That means that the air bubbles are firm enough, cooked enough, that it's done. Take it out, and then let it cool, not flat, but on a rack, so that it cools evenly. If you put it on a flat surface, what happens, it creates a vacuum, and all the moisture goes to the bottom. And 2 things could happen. The cake could collapse because it's not cooling evenly, or it makes the bottom of the cake soggy. and it compromises the texture of the cake.
All great tips from Chef Jim Dodge. Where can our foodie friends find you?
I do have a website. It's very easy, chefjimdodge.com.
Oh, thank you so much for being on Kitchen Chat.
My pleasure. What a treat.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, dear foodie friends. Please visit me in my kitchen, kitchenchat.info. And always remember to take a moment and savor the day.
Thanks for joining Margaret for Kitchen Chat today. Margaret would be so excited for you to drop by and visit with her at kitchenchat.info, where you'll enjoy podcasts, blogs, recipes, tips from chefs, and even great giveaways. She invites you to share your recipes and kitchen stories too. As Margaret always says, savor the day.